Hi, Terry Shaneyfelt from UAB School of Medicine. In this video, I'd like to demonstrate two ways you can calculate relative risk reduction. And I'm going to use a study which compared spironolactone to placebo in patients with advanced congestive heart failure, and the outcome of interest was total mortality. Less patients in the spironolactone group died than in the placebo group. So I might like to have a clinically meaningful way to express this relationship of improved mortality from spironolactone. The most commonly used way this is reported in studies is something called a relative risk reduction. So let's see how we make that calculation. As I said, there are two ways we can make this calculation, an easy way and a hard way. Let's start with the harder way first. And to do that, I'm going to actually have to do two calculations first. I'm going to have to calculate something called the control event rate and something called the experimental event rate. Now, the control event rate is the rate of events, in this case the rate of death or percentage of death, in everybody in the control group or the placebo group. So that is 386 patients died out of a total of 841, and when you make that calculation it comes out to 0.46 or 46%. The experimental event rate is the percentage of patients in the experimental group, in this case the spironolactone group, that experienced death. So we'll have 284 divided by 822, and when you make that calculation it comes out to 0.35 or 35%. So now I can go plug in some numbers, and the formula for a relative risk reduction is the absolute difference between the experimental event rate and the control event rate divided by the control event rate, because everything is relative to the control group. So if I plug in these numbers and just put 0.46 minus 0.35, that comes out to 0.11. My control event rate is 0.46, and when you make this calculation it comes out to 0.24, which is 24%. So the way to interpret this is that spironolactone reduced mortality by 24% compared to placebo. Now there's one other way I can calculate a relative risk reduction using the relative risk up here. So 1 minus the relative risk is also the relative risk reduction. So if I just plug that in, it's 1 minus 0.70, which comes out to 0.3, which is 30%. Now these two numbers, people will point out, aren't equal. Why are they different? Well, this relative risk up here that I used in one of my calculations was calculated using multivariable models that were adjusted for a variety of prognostic factors. Our calculation here is a raw calculation. I don't adjust it for anything. So that's why those two numbers are different. So I hope this helps you understand how to calculate a relative risk reduction, a very commonly used measure of outcome in randomized control trials.